All right, looks like we have a good crowd here. Real excited to review with everybody today our latest update. We'll make it quick, but we should be able to get into enough detail for you to really understand some of the cool new features we've developed. As we go along, if folks want to use the chat feature, we've got Chaz and Bill Boynton from our team here in the room with me. They'll relay questions to me as we go, and we can dig in on any of the questions you might have. As everybody's aware, we've recently pushed live a new release focusing on list import tools, a campaign dashboard, and some other great things. So this is me. I'm the Dennis Kelly. I'm the CEO of Postalytics. I've spoken to many of you in the past. If I haven't spoken with you, then I would love to. I'm going to have my contact information available at the end of the presentation. And one of the things I really like to do is get product ideas and suggestions from our clients. Those product suggestions have driven a lot of the development that we've come up with here since we first released the product, and will continue to. So we're real eager and interested to dig in and get your ideas and find ways to continue to improve Postalytics. So today we're going to focus on first, an overview of the release, what we focused on and why. We'll drill into the key features that we developed, and then, as we mentioned, feel free to chime in with questions that you might have through the online chat feature. So the focus of this release, as we mentioned, was on lists and campaigns. And we decided to take some pretty fundamental reviews of the basic underpinnings of how lists are both imported, as well as how lists and campaigns work together. And so, as you know, Postalytics has been live out in the market for a little bit over a year. We've processed millions of pieces of direct mail, had thousands of campaigns run through the tool. And we've learned quite a bit as we've been watching campaigns roll out, interacting with folks through customer service. And so we decided that we needed to really rip apart and start over again in a few key areas. And so the first thing we did was we focused on building up as we say here, a more robust set of list import tools. And the first area of focus was on the CSV and Excel files. We'll be rolling these changes into some of the other list import features or methods of importing lists as we continue to roll on here. Next, we focused on the campaign dashboard, and we've been able to really tighten it up and to provide a much higher level of detail on what's happening with your delivery in particular of your direct mail. And then finally, we've been able to tie together the campaign data with list data. So now as things are happening in your campaign, it's actually updating your list. And we'll get into specifically how that works and why we've done that. So to get started, as we mentioned, the CSV and List Import has had a complete overhaul, and so we've started from scratch and rebuilt the entire process. And the reason why is that we've identified it as our #1 customer support issue. And you know, it's not surprising. Taking data from lots of different types of sources, trying to organize it in a spreadsheet, and then map it into another system is inherently kind of a difficult process. There's a lot of variables that can occur, and a lot of things can go wrong. A lot of that is really driven by problems with spreadsheets. And so when you get a spreadsheet from a data source, it often isn't really designed to present information in a way that is optimized for a direct mail campaign. And so what we found was that method that we had put together for the list import originally, while it worked, it took users some time to kind of figure out exactly how to do things, and it was fairly brittle. And what I mean by brittle is that if any little thing was off, it would kind of blow up the whole import. And so what we've done with this release is we've created a much more flexible importing method so that the typical things that we have found where spreadsheets contain data problems or formatting problems, we've been able to kind of strip out and continue on with the upload and the mapping process. And so, you know, a lot of things like having HTML in your spreadsheet or formatting like bold and colors, missing header records and columns, things like that, we're now able to process and manage much more effectively than we could in the past. The other big thing that this release includes with the list import is we've created a new way to handle zip codes. And so many of you may be aware that several states have zip codes that begin with a 0, and Massachusetts being one of them, where we're located. And so spreadsheets will often, when presented with a set of numbers that begin with a 0, they'll strip the 0 out. And so our number one error that creates invalid contacts that cannot be sent to is related to this leading 0 issue. So what we've done in the new update is we've embedded intelligence to compare the state with the zip code. And if there is a 4-digit zip code in a state that has leading zeros for zip codes, we're fixing it for you. And so even if your spreadsheet is wrong, if it is designed to be a zip code like ours, which is 02370, we'll be presented with 2370 and then fix it, add the 0 at the beginning so that you can map to that contact. So how does this all work? Well, when you go through your first step, as you see in this screen, we're giving a lot more information about how to properly set up your data file, including the ability to download a sample so you can see what a properly formatted data file looks like. Once you've named it and you've brought your file in, the first thing you'll see is a list data preview. And so we're going to show you exactly what your data looks like to us before we actually begin the process. And so you can get a quick look and say, all right, well, you know, I'm missing an address column, right? We can't send mail to people without an address. So you can go back and upload a new list, start over. You can scroll to see all of your columns, and you can get a little quick preview of where you may be missing some data records along the way. So after you get a chance to look at your data in its raw format, the next thing that we'll do is show you a breakout of your data fields by our required mapping fields. So in the past, we had kind of a long string of different fields that you needed to go ahead and map. What we're doing now is we're saying, all right, first we're going to focus on getting the required data fields mapped. So we need to know who you're mailing to and where you're mailing to. And you'll see these panels where we do some auto mapping, and the auto mapped fields are labeled green. And so we were able to automatically map first name and last name in this instance, and you have an option to map the company field. The mailing to the address data is not completely auto mapped. You can see that we've auto mapped address 1, address 2, city, and state, but we couldn't figure out how to map the zip code. You're gonna have to do that. And that panel turns red and won't let you proceed until you map all the required fields. So unlike previously, where you could kind of move on and get kind of confused about what needs to be mapped and what didn't, we're breaking it all out, making it super clear in the upload process. And then our next step, we break out the personalization and other data fields. So after you've taken care of who you're mailing to, where you're mailing to, you can then map other fields that you might be using in your creative to further personalize your direct mail campaign. So as you can see, we've got common fields that are sort of standard fields inside of Postalytics, and then user-defined fields. And so what you're able to do is map those fields on an as-needed basis. These are obviously optional. And you'll see also from this little animation that we've developed a new search process. So if you've got tons of different data columns that you're in the process of mapping, you'll be able to type in a quick search on any one of these, pull up that column, and do the mapping very, very quickly. So this mapping process is very different, greatly enhanced, should eliminate a ton of errors and keep you moving quickly. The last step in the mapping process is a focus on the health of your list. And so before the mapping, before the import proceeds, we're going to show you what your data looks like after the mapping. So we showed you what your raw data look like. Now we're going to show you what your data looks like when the mapping is occurred and the import is about to start. So you can see how your columns have matched up. You can take, again, a quick scan of your data. In this case, we fixed the leading zeros on the data that was there before. And then you can proceed. So as your list is being imported, we're going to present to you a list health report. And this will give you a snapshot of what is happening in the import process. So we're breaking out the total contacts in your list, how many of them were valid, meaning we can mail to them based on the data that we've captured, how many we're going to import. So you can see here we have 15 contacts in the list, 10 of them are valid, but we're importing 12. Well, what do you mean you're importing 12 if only 10 of them are valid? We're not importing duplicate contacts. We will import invalid contacts because you can fix them. So we're identifying the duplicates separate from the invalids. We've also now included a new concept called truncation. What that means is if you've got a field of data that is too big for the data field that you've mapped to, we cut that data off. We call that a truncated contact or a truncated data field. So you'll be able to actually see all of that as you do the import later on. So we're showing you, while the import is happening, exactly what's happening in your list. So this is a total rewrite. It's designed to really speed things up, give you much better information about your list. As you know, the list is such an important part of direct mail. You know, the old 40-40-20 rule says that 40% of the success of your campaign is dependent upon your audience or your list. So next we're going to dive into the campaign dashboard. And as we mentioned, we've also done a lot of work here. And the focus is really on giving you much deeper information on what is happening once you press that send button or once the scheduled send occurs. And so the most obvious thing that you'll see here is we've created a completely different top to the campaign dashboard. And the idea is to give you a much better understanding of what is happening with the scans that we are getting from the post office. And so you see now that we've laid out from left to right more of a workflow or a process that is typically followed by these scans. And so we've got little indicators you can mouse over. You can get information on exactly what these different scan items mean. But the general idea is left to right, we're moving from the creation process through delivery. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see that we've got categories for the data that either indicates we had a bad address or a new category of data that we'll talk about here in a sec. So another big improvement that we've made. When the Postal Service tells us that there's a return to sender scan, they've determined that that address is no longer valid, that they can't send mail to that address. And so when we built the first version of Postalytics, we assumed, great, that's great information, we pass it right along to folks. What we didn't know was that the Postal Service continues to then send other scans that fall into the in local area or in transit category. And so even though they say, yeah, this mailer is no good, they continue to send other scans. So our previous dashboard was telling you at one point, maybe somebody was returned to sender, and then at another point, their status would be in local area. And so that really doesn't make any sense. Marketers just want to know what addresses are bad, so they don't send to them again. And so now we've essentially, whenever we get a return to sender or a rerouted scan, we cut it off. We don't let the Postal Service and their kind of bad data mess you up from that point forward. So that's a big improvement, and it ties into something else that we're going to talk about as we keep going. The next thing that we've done in the dashboard is that we've developed a new category for the USPS, and that is what we're calling incomplete USPS scan data. And so the other thing that we've really learned is that while the post office strives to scan 100% of your mail pieces, it doesn't. And it may stop scanning at different points along the way. And so what was happening is that some records were being left in the in-local area, in transit categories, because, or even sometimes mail piece created and it's never moved from there, because the USPS either never scanned it or sort of stopped scanning along the way. So in our experience, these mail pieces are typically delivered. They just stop being scanned for various reasons that we are, are completely out of our control. So, but we don't know that for sure because we're not getting the scan data. So what we've decided to do is create this new category called incomplete scan data. We're finding it can be between, say, 1% and 5% sometimes, more so in standard mail campaigns than in first class. But you'll see that when you go into your campaign dashboards now, for campaigns that have been out there for a while, you'll start to see some of your results falling into this category. You can get a list of those folks very easily just by clicking the details button, and it'll drop you down lower in the dashboard. It'll show you a list of all the folks who are in any of these categories that we've identified, and then you can export those into a CSV file at any point along the way. The other new addition to the campaign dashboard is the contact list health panel. And so, as we mentioned, the list is really an incredibly important part of the success of your campaign. And Postalytics is in a place where it can really start to gather a lot of important information about your list. And so we're now presenting you with that information. So at the top, you'll see that there's a summary that gives you kind of the overall health. So the name of the list that is used in the campaign, the source of the list, how many campaigns has it been used in. This is important because more and more people are moving toward the direct mail best practice of establishing multi-touch campaigns using our mail drop feature. And so the data that we're aggregating here will be aggregated from across all of your campaigns. So in this list, there's 134 valid contacts and 34 invalid contacts that's been used in one campaign. On the left-hand side, you'll see that we're pulling in the data from this specific campaign. We're saying there are 6 reroutes, 7 return to senders. And on the right-hand side, we're showing you data that we've captured from the import. So there are 21 contacts with field issues that kept us from sending, or we've marked them as invalid. And we're presenting to you all of the different categories of invalid data that are within these contact records. So, little known feature in Postalytics, you can actually go in and edit and modify your contact records and save them, and you can revalidate them that way, so then they can be used again in a subsequent campaign. So this is great. We're presenting you with a lot of new information here about the health of your list. And then more importantly, what we're doing is we are now updating your list with the actual campaign data. And so your return to senders and your reroutes that we are capturing in each campaign are now being marked as invalid in your list. So the more often that you use your list, the higher the delivery rate should be, because each time the post office determines it's an invalid address, it's being captured and updated. And so, as I mentioned, these multi-touch campaigns are really a direct mail best practice. Most direct marketing experts would recommend that you touch a list 3 to 5 times over the course of a campaign. And by our lists now being able to communicate with the campaigns, each of those sends should have a higher and higher delivery rate. And so this was a huge feature for us, a big breakthrough. And we're going to be able to do a lot more information, a lot more with this over time, now that we've established this data connection between the campaigns and the lists. We have a question.
Yep. Question is the feature to search fields during the mapping process also available when working with HubSpot lists?
That's a great question. And the answer is on our next slide. So we are currently taking all of the work that we have built and modifying both the HubSpot and Salesforce List Import features to incorporate all of this. So that search function that you mentioned, the mapping, the leading zero fix on the import, all of that will be rolled out over the next couple of weeks in the HubSpot and Salesforce list import functions. We'll be sending out an email to folks as we capture that information and make it live. You know, the hard part is done. It was a huge amount of work to create all this new infrastructure. Now it's just a matter of adapting it to our various list import processes. Another question.
Sure. Would the resends auto skip the invalid addresses? So probably on, you know, return to senders and all of those things.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the big deal, and that's what we're so excited about by having the campaign as it starts to capture return to senders and reroutes. We're marking those contacts in your original list as invalid. Invalid contacts are not sent to unless they are corrected manually. So you can go in and edit those contacts. So if you've got, you know, 3, 4, 5 touches set up over a period of time, then your system is just going to continue to learn the list is going to get healthier and healthier each time you send as a result. Great. So that's what I had for everybody here today. We wanted to keep it quick so that you can keep moving in your day. You may have already seen we've got a new kind of a deep dive blog post up on our website that you can get what we covered here today in a lot more detail. Of course, you can always get in touch with us. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm super interested in getting feedback on the product. We are a company that is really focused on building a product that is highly productive, efficient, and makes your life easier. You know, direct mail has traditionally been a difficult thing to pull off from a production standpoint. Software should be making your life easier. That's what we're trying to do. So if you have ideas, shoot me a note. We can hop on a call, or you can lay out your ideas, and we're really eager to get them. So thank you, everybody. Are there going to be any other questions, Chaz?
Nope, not right now.
Okay, good. Well, if there are any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. I hope you all have a great day, and we thank you for joining us here.